Yo, what's up? Chilling, chilling. How you doing? Good to hear, man. Uh, ooh, let me go look. Oh yeah, I see it. I see it. I see it. I like it. I like it. Let me see. Okay. Um, I mean, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Just to make sure that you can hear me this time. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That clean transition. Alpha,
Nice.
let us know if you could hear myself and Soul. I changed out
Yeah,
one thing, but
please let us know.
I've only heard one voice. So just you gotta wait for him to talk. My bad.
Yeah. So hopefully, uh,
Oh, you hear two now. Okay, so you hear me and
oh, he
Soul.
does? Cool. All right. Yeah, because that was so weird. Because I don't know, like, yeah, I don't know what happened last time.
It might have just been like an OBS bug or something, because this is not the first time we ran into that.
Uh-huh.
So I'm using Streamlabs now, and it's
Okay.
it's clean. It's real clean, and it gives all these like really cool transitions stuff like that. So hopefully it we can use this from now on,
Okay. Cool.
and be good to go. So
Sounds.
let me do like a couple quick check-ins, and then we can like officially get started. But if you want to start off the intro, just go for it.
Yeah, I'll wait for you, man. Yeah, go ahead and do your thing. Give some people some time to come in as well, hopefully. Let them know that we're streaming. Uh, and all that good stuff.
All right, we're good. Yeah, I know Streamlight does
Okay.
have a bigger delay. I think it's like tied to like your CPU before something like that. But
Okay.
I mean, whatever works works. That's
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
at this point. At
All
least we're
right.
not doing like a gameplay stream, so it's all good.
Okay. Um, we're on episode 109, right? Because we didn't do the one last time.
110, 110.
Oh, it's still 110? Okay.
Yeah, the last one we did was 109. The also Starfield one.
Okay.
Yeah. hmm
All right. Um, all right. So, get started. Guys, welcome to episode 110 of the DualShock Sense podcast. I am your host, Soul, connoisseur anime waifus, joined as always by we got two-thirds of the usual suspects here. Macho, how you doing, man? What's going on?
What's going on, man? Yeah, I know it's been a minute, man, since we've done this, but I'm excited to get back into it. We got a couple new fresh layouts you can see. It's the same layout from before, but man, the starting screen, end screen, it all makes a difference. It looks really slick, so I'm excited to see how far I can take that here.
Nice, nice. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, Uh, Jim Ryan retiring. We got Naughty Dog, their situation. Um, Assassin's Creed Mirage. The reviews just came out. The game is also out, so get to talk a little bit about that. And whatever strikes our fancy, I suppose. But yeah, I want to remind everyone to go ahead and like the podcast, share it out, all that good stuff. We would greatly appreciate it. Without further ado, let's jump into the games that we have been playing this past week. Um, Macho, why don't you kick things off, man? What have you been up to?
Sadly, not a whole lot of gaming, man.
Okay,
It's I've been mostly kind of. I got a couple of plans in the tuck here. You may be privy to some of it um,
okay,
from when I sent you an invite on Discord, but I got a couple of things brewing. So I got a few more set pieces to put in place, and then we get to good to go. I've mostly been focused on that. That's like been coming home from work on computer, going straight on the computer again, just messing with a whole bunch of different things. But whenever I'm having fun in the spare time, I've been mostly been playing Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis on mobile. To be really
okay,
honest with you, been thinking about going back to the Street Fighter 6. I want to do it, but again, just have a couple other plans I need to put in place before that. And a little bit of Final Fantasy 14, mostly Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Man, this game is hella addicting. I will say I kind of gave it like the wrong first impression, saying it's like a really predatory with like its microtransactions, stuff like that, and it is for the most part. Like it does kind of throw like the banners in your face, or like you can buy X crystals and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, it's actually like a really fleshed out game in here, and it is super grindy. So it is like the mobile game shtick, but regardless, I just kind of have it just going off in the background while I'm working or I'm watching like a live stream or something like that. And I'm just having fun actually upgrading all the weapons, going through the story, and now I'm at the end game, and this is where the RPG part of it really comes in, where setting your materia slots, your weapons that have different abilities or different elements on them really does make a difference in how you defeat bosses. It's not really just about matching the level power that the game sets out. It really is about your build and whether you can survive it.
okay,
So yeah, so I've been having a lot of fun with that, man. It's been a really good time, and also all the costumes that they released too is really cool. And the fun is it's a generous kind of mobile game. It's kind of weird. I was talking to Flame about it earlier. I was like, yeah, it sounds a little too generous. Where you pull on banners for mostly for costumes that have abilities with them, but they're not game breaking. They're not really kind of meta changing. It's more just to fit your own certain build. And when you're pulling for these outfits, you get stamps, and the RNG comes from the stamps. So you need like 12 stamps to get the actual outfit, 6 stamps to get the exclusive weapon in the banner. But again, all of it's not super game changing. It'll help in your builds, but like it's not like, oh, I need this sort of thing. So you can totally skip on it if you want to, and I have. I amassed like 30,000 crystals now, so that whenever the Halloween banner comes out, I just spend all my crystals on that just to get the cool costumes. But yeah, it's a really great mobile game. Highly recommend it. I'm glad it's actually come to Steam too. That's a big thing. I think after First Soldier kind of like flopped in its first month and no one's really paying attention to it, the fact that this one got so many uh, great reviews and just like reception within the first month, and people and squares are saying how they're making a lot of good money on this one. The fact they're bringing it to Steam just shows that it's sticking with people. So I'm happy. It's actually a good game, so I recommend it.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Has that been? I I feel like you may have talked about this once, but since you're kind of like you're dabbling more and more into mobile, are you a big Marvel Snap guy?
I was so addicted to it that I had to stop playing. It was just
Understandable.
yeah, it was like the first or second season. I forgot. It was I think it was the first season. It was like the Wild or something like that with the saber tooth card, and no, it was just a lot of fun. I was just getting addicted to it because it was just really cool, just putting all together all your different builds and stuff like that. And I'm a big art guy, so whenever I see like a new art for a character, I'm like, oh, I want that, and that art could be like $30 or something like that. I just can't see myself doing that in any mobile game ever again. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was, and then I deleted because it just got too addicting.
Gotcha, gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, all
What
right.
about you, man? What have you
Uh,
been up to?
literally, it's just been Baldur's Gate. It's just been Baldur's Gate. I have now. Uh, although I think the PlayStation clock, you know how it is. It's off sometimes.
Yeah, it doesn't really. It's
Um,
not as accurate at all.
it says it's 100 hours, but I want to say it's like lower end of 90. So approaching 100 hours, but yeah, it's somewhere in the 90 to 100 hour sort of range. Um, but yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, man, has just kind of been it's been my only focus um right now until Cyberpunk. I'm nearing the end, which is I'm on Act 3 right now.
Okay, I was about to
Where you
ask where you were.
actually where you actually get to Baldur's Gate. Um, so yeah, I'm almost there, man. And the PS5 tells me I'm like 75% through the game, so yeah, it it's bittersweet, man. I can feel it that I'm approaching the end. Um, but still just having such a great time with the game, man. I it's everything I hoped it would be, especially coming off of Divinity Original Sin 2. And more. It's it really is just like one of a kind game, man. Like these kinds of experiences don't come around often, and I'm just really like savoring every bit of it, man. From the characters, how connected I feel to these characters, even the ones that I didn't. There were characters, and I'm sure you have this too, where like Gale, for instance, I in the entirety of the first act, I didn't have him in my party at all. Like I specifically rolled with my character, Astarion, Shadowheart, and then like a combination of Lae'zel and Karlach, and I would never use Gale. But then like just because I got comfortable with the characters that I was using, but then like I started experimenting more and talking to these characters more, and then like now all of a sudden I can't take Gale out of my party. Like I find him so incredibly useful, you know? Um,
I'm surprised.
so
I made the switch to. So I initially in Act One, I always had Will, Karlach, and obviously my character.
yeah.
Who's the other? I want to say either Shadowheart. Oh yeah, I think it was Shadowheart. And then once Act Two came around, no, it wasn't Shadow. It was someone else. I forgot. Maybe it was Lae'zel. But then once I got to Act Two, and I want to ask you this actually, what route did you take in Act Two? Because I went to the Underdark, and that completely shifted my party to just being mostly spellcasters.
Yeah, yeah, I went through the Underdark as well.
And Gale was
Actually,
a
I think that.
lifesaver, man. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually think actually what's funny about that because I think see maybe I'm getting my wires crossed, but I think the Underdark is still Act 1. It's still considered Act 1. Um,
well, I got the
there.
achievement that I got. I completed Act One.
Did you get to the Shadowlands?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So the Shadowlands is Act 2, but I think majority of the Underdark is still Act 1. Because
Okay, then
I
Shadowlands
didn't
is what I meant then.
yeah, because I didn't use Gale for the Underdark at all. I remember there was one part when you get to the Arcane Tower. That's when I brought him. When you find the Arcane Tower in the Underdark, I brought him aboard for that. But still, for majority of the Underdark, he wasn't in my party, either. But yeah, yeah. So I explored like all of the Underdark. And then I went and did when you go over into Act 2, I did the Kraish, that little section, which is like tied to Lae'zel's story. Um, did that, and then I think I went back to the Underdark to finish that up. And then through the Underdark, I went to the Shadowlands. And then the Shadowlands is pretty much like the majority of, or if not all of Act 2, really. Um,
Yeah, it's the last place in the Shadowlands, Shar's Tower or Shar's Temple.
um, it's it's like Shar's Temple, but then also Moonrise Towers is like that's like the last like bit of Act Two.
Okay,
Um,
because when I was going to Shar's temple and I was looking up a guy because I'm stupid about the puzzles, um, in that temple, and that was just to get into the damn temple. My friend made fun of me. She's like, "You couldn't figure that out." I was like, "Dude, like I was pressing every one of those damn paintings. I don't know what to do." So I just looked it up, and then I saw in that guide it said like, "Yeah, don't go any further unless you want to do everything in Act Two, because this is where
oh
the
yeah,
end
yeah, yeah.
point is." Yeah. So
Right.
that's when I went back. I was like, "All right, hold on. I got like at least 4 or 5 different quests tied to Moonrise Towers. So let me just go there."
Right. So there and you'll see it that there's when you completely finish Char's Temple, there's going to be a um there's like all these like specific trials that you need to do when you're in that temple. Once you finish them all, there's like a final room that has like you walking into like a body of water. Once you reach that point, it will like you'll know it when you get there. It will come up with a message like, "Hey, once you pass through this, there's no going back. Like this will progress the story to a point where you cannot like go back and finish like act 1 and act 2 quests and things like that." So you'll know it when you see it. Um, so and I
Okay.
reached that point early too. So obviously what I did was once I got to that point, I then went back and finished like all the things surrounding Moonrise Towers. But you can't I'm trying to remember because it's been so long since I did this stuff. You can't necessarily complete Moonrise Towers without going through that point of no return, because when you go and reach that point of no return inside Shar's temple, it gives you something that you need in order to finish Moonrise Towers, if that makes sense. Um,
So you
so
have to go back, but you can't go back.
because I'm trying to see how to explain that. Like, no. So it doesn't take you to like a brand new like it doesn't take you to Act Three, basically. Like once you go to that point of no return, it basically takes you to the second half of Act Two. So
Okay.
yeah, so once you go to the point of no return, it takes you to like a special little area in order to retrieve that thing that you've been looking for. Once you retrieve it, you come back to the Shadowlands, and you can still like explore, the Shadowlands at that point, but it's like really like once you come back from that point of no return, it's like okay, this is the final push into Moonrise Towers.
Okay.
Um,
So would you recommend then when I go back to it to one more exploration, two Shar's Temple, and then three Moonrise Towers?
um, hmm.
Or
See,
because my thing I was gonna go to Moonrise Towers and then Shar's Temple.
yeah, I would do that. Because there's still quests that you can pick up in Moonrise Towers and interactions and things like that. For
Okay.
instance, you've probably gotten this already because I'm assuming that you've been to Last Light Inn already.
Yep.
Yeah, so like the tieflings, for instance, they've been captured and they're imprisoned at Moonrise Towers.
Yep.
That is something you absolutely need to do. You need to break them out before you do the point of no return, or else they're lost forever. That's like one of those things that like where I suggest that yeah, you clean up as much as possible at Moonrise Towers before you do before you finish off Shar's temple and you reach the point of no return. Um
Okay. All right. Then
yeah, so
yeah, I'll
things
do
like
that
that.
then.
Yeah. Um but yeah, just a lot of Baldur's Gate 3, man. Just really falling in love with just everything about it, man, from the music, the writing.
It's a good game,
I'm
man.
just yeah, I'm just so invested into everything that's happening. Um and it's funny because like not to dunk on Starfield, but
Damn. Okay, he's about to bring out the boxing gloves. All right. All
but it's
right.
like it's and I don't know because you're not on Twitter, but it's like it's funny seeing there's this one specific reviewer who I just started kind of getting into like his YouTube videos and stuff like that.
I'll name him. Name
Um
name drop him. Let's see what we got.
Paul Tassi. But he's cool.
The Forbes
He
guy.
but he generally makes like good content. Like I like his stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
his headlines are a
he
little salacious, but
yeah
yeah,
yeah
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, he gave Starfield a 9.5 out of 10, and
yeah.
he was
God
singing
damn.
he was singing its praises, and he was like, on Metacritic, it's basically in line with like most Sony first party games, but it's not a God of War and it's not a Last of Us. Blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And then once Cyberpunk 27 Phantom Liberty came out, he put out a tweet that was like, "Man, the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty is really making me rethink my thoughts on Starfield." And I'm like, I'm seeing a lot of that like on the timeline where a lot of people are like, "Man, Cyberpunk and Baldur's Gate is really like exposing Starfield and Bethesda in general of just like how outdated they are." And it's like, I've been saying this since Fallout 4, people. like
Yeah,
these guys do
I heard
not
the conversations, man. I heard them.
these guys do not like, it feels like they are a generation behind, and they still are, man. Like, this is why I still don't understand. And Fallout 4 without a doubt has been like, was like their most controversial game before Starfield. So it's not like Fallout 4 was like this perfect game that everybody loves. It's absolutely not. But it's just like, I'm still shocked that even Starfield, in the little bit that I've seen of that game, that it still was able to get the good reviews that it got, because it's just like, man, that game just like still feels like it's not catching up to the other games that frankly are doing the same thing and are doing it better, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
I mean,
just more.
I can't say much on it, but on the fact that the people I talked to that have played it, uh, they love it, and then there's others are just like it's like a great middle ground game. It feels like, it's gonna
Yeah,
if you want a game that's gonna scratch that itch, then more than likely Starfield is gonna do that for you. But
yeah,
if you're like me, where like you kind of really like you're kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're ambivalent to what it's offering,
mhm,
but you want something else, and you're not really gonna care for it. Like if I feel like playing a first person RPG, the first game I'm gonna go to is Cyberpunk, because I already convinced myself that that's the game I want to play. You know, so
yeah.
it's weird. It's a weird thing with Starfield, and I don't know. Just seeing the videos, I was like, yeah, it's not gonna be for me. But and it's funny
Yeah.
seeing other people that were singing its praise. And now they got Cyberpunk. They're like, oh damn, this actually might be better. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
why
So
is
yeah,
this?
it's been interesting to see that conversation kind of like bubble, and like, and even like I'm like watching a bunch of like Starfield analysis videos, and it's like they all have like you should look at their titles, man, because they're all like really like, there was one that I was watching from this big channel that was like the good and the mostly bad of Starfield. And it's like like a lot of videos like that are starting to like come out from these big channels. So it's just like, I don't know about you, man. I previously, earlier in the year, I was like, it is, you could take it to the bank. It's a sure bet that Starfield's going to be in the game of the year conversation. Now, I truly like, and tell me what you think about this. I personally think Hi-Fi Rush is more deserving of game of the year at the end of the year, Keeley's Game Awards, than Starfield. Like 100%. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, there's no question in my mind about it. It's it's one of those things where um, the idea of quality over quantity,
Yeah.
and from what I'm hearing from people, and then I'm gonna actually reference MinMax here when Ben Hansen and his group were talking about it, that it does a lot of things, but none of them extraordinary.
Yeah.
Whereas Hi-Fi Rush is a tight 10 to 12 hour experience, and every lick of that game is quality. Like you just know. So like when you play a game, you just feel that it is oozing charm. It has all the quality that you want from like a game. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can just feel it. And as soon as I got to like the menu screen, I played like the first stage of Hi-Fi Rush. I was like, oh yeah, this is something that's really unique and fun, and that's gonna attach to you. So,
Yeah,
but
I think
again, some people feel that way about Starfield, though. So
yeah, I think that's a perfect way to like kind of like uh encapsulate this whole conversation about Starfield is that it is the definition of like jack of all trades, master of none. It does a bunch of these things like a 7 out of 10 at best. And that's what you get with
yeah,
Starfield.
yeah, that's it's
Um
it's honestly the same with Final Fantasy 16, where it does a lot of these things really well, but none of them super amazing, which is why like it's rated highly and people love it, but it's not a great RPG, and
mhm.
it's like three quarters of a great action game.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
trying to do all these different things, and the only thing they, in my opinion, is 10 out of 10 is that story, the characters, the world, the music, everything else, but like the hardcore gaminess of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Um
to one man's trash, another man's treasure, kind of thing.
yeah. So yeah, but man, Baldur's Gate 3, man, what a game. I'm excited to keep going with it. Um
Yeah, me too. Me too.
and then so yeah, I mean, I guess the plan is man, cuz Spider-Man 2 is coming up. Is that once I finish Baldur's Gate 3, which is hopefully within the next week, um I'm going immediately into Cyberpunk, which shouldn't take that long. Because I think the expansion is like something like 20 hours or something like that, so it won't be too bad. And then go right into Spider-Man 2, and then I have Ghost Runner 2 at the end of the month. So it's looking like a it's a pretty busy month, man. It's a busy month.
Yeah, you eating. Yeah, no, I
Definitely.
got a couple games on talk too. With I just finished. Actually, one of the games I just finished in the past couple weeks was Paranormal Sight. So that's all good and done. Really good game. It kind of like tapers off a little bit as you keep playing. Like those the really cool meta mechanics I mentioned before about having to like to change like your in-game audio and stuff like that. It's kind of like a not really one and done. I did like two more times in the game, but it wasn't really like prevalent. So that was one of the games I finished off, and it was pretty good. And then I got a couple of things in the tuck. I got Yakuza Zero that I'm ready to dive into. Final Fantasy 14 just dropped a new patch. We got Spider-Man 2 releasing soon. Sea of Stars I want to get to, and then it's spooky season, so I gotta play Resident Evil 4. I have to play that this month
Yeah, you do.
with the
You
Separate
do.
Ways DLC. Which are you actually gonna get that Separate
Oh,
Ways?
yeah, I want to. I
It's
should do that.
$10. That's not bad.
Oh man. You know what? Yeah, maybe I could probably knock that out in like a night, honestly.
Yeah, it's like a 3 to 4 hour DLC. People are saying that Capcom should have charged more for it, but let's not give them that
Yeah.
idea.
Um, the one thing I forgot to say about Baldur's Gate, and I had heard this um very kind of briefly or like in passing, where like, hey, like this game is fantastic in arcs 1 and 2, but some people were saying that it kind of not loses the plot or drops the ball in Act 3, but Act 3 is rough. And so I was really curious like what people meant by that once I got there. And because people were also like reviewers specifically were like oh, like this game is like pristine in terms of like its performance and bugs. Like I hardly ran into anything like that in the game, and blah blah blah. And then a lot of people were like kind of debating that because they're like, did these guys play Act 3 at all? Because Act 3 is rough.
Yeah, same thing
So
with Cyberpunk. Remember that?
yeah, so then like I was really curious about, you know, if I would run into those issues as well. Act 3 is rough, man. It is. It's in the sense of like it's not like I'm seeing people like fly through the world or you know, nothing game breaking, but just in terms of like textures, man, like there are times when I jump into a conversation, and these are with like companions, right? Arguably the most important characters in this game, where I hop into a conversation with like Lae'zel, for instance, and like her entire model hasn't like finished loading in yet. Um, in the sense of like she just looks like it's hard to describe, like b blurry, I guess. Um,
Hmm.
like uh
Yeah, it's
smooth,
just yeah, it's
you
just
know?
yeah, it's just like smooth clay. Yeah.
Right, right. And then like you have to wait a few seconds and then oh okay, there's like the like the laugh lines on her face. There's like the skin marks like on her cheeks and oh there's like the little like cracks and crevices in her armor. They're finally like loading in and stuff like that. But like this also applies to the world. There's sometimes when like I'm entering a brand new area and everything is like really smooth. Like the walls aren't like brick walls. They're just like they're like silly putty. And then you walk around for a few seconds and then everything loads in. So it's like it sucks because obviously everything else is a 10 out of 10. But like when that happens and it happens frequently, it pulls me out of the experience, right? Where it kind of reminds me, oh yeah, this is a game. I'm not I'm not, this character who's like experiencing or walking around in what feels like such a well realized world. Like immediately it pulls me out and I realize that I'm just playing a game, which sucks, but it I don't know. I don't know what else to say other than it sucks. I hope they get that ironed out. I hope by the time that you get there that they iron that stuff out for sure because yeah, it gets rough at times. So,
Yeah, I mean,
um
on PC, I haven't run to anything really crazy, surprisingly.
that's the thing is that like in Act 1 and 2, I didn't have any of those issues for whatever reason. It's just Act 3 that like the game feels like it's starting to break down for whatever reason.
It might be just the population of the city and stuff like that. I feel like it's with this kind of game. It comes with the territory, just the amount
Mm.
of detail, especially with this one. Like it surprised me when I first saw the amount of detail it had in this pseudo open world, and how great it all looked, including like the facial animation stuff like that. So I kind of give him like a slap on the wrist when it comes to stuff like that. But again, I haven't been to Act 3.
Yeah.
However, they have been putting a lot of hot fixes and updates, so
Yeah.
that's also one of the reasons why I'm taking this really slow.
Right,
I'm
right.
not in any rush whatsoever. Like I'm starting new playthroughs. I start like a co-op playthrough with my coworkers, and my new playthrough as a bard. I'm kind of slowly going through that, causing chaos with my words and my music. So it's really just kind of like a slower pace for me. Like I would love to like talk about this in like our game of the year talks, but I don't even know if I will get to that because I really just want to like take it at my own pace. And you said right at the beginning of our conversation that one of these games is it's rare one of these games come out, so why kind of blast through it, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So so
Yeah.
hopefully it is sort of ironed out by the time I get there. But as of right now, nothing crazy. I'd say that the biggest kind of thing that takes me out is when it does either from top down view to cutscene,
Mm.
or if we're going to a fade to black to a teleport, right? Or what's it called? Fast travel.
Yeah.
It would chug like right in between. It's from I'll go from 60 frames per second to 20 or 15, and then it'll
Mm.
take a little bit to like get it started back up. That's the only thing. I'm just like, oh man, it feels rough, but
Yeah.
it lasts like a little bit and I forget about it. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, and those those loading screens can be long sometimes, especially specifically when you're in Act 2 and you're fast traveling back to an Act 1 location, because it's loading in like a brand new a brand new map essentially because it's the entirety of Act 1 that you're going back to. So those loading screens kind of suck. Um, they're whenever your save's coming and you're loading back to like a previous save, those loads can kind of be rough. I feel that specifically when I'm messing around with dye colors. I don't know if you've really gotten too much into that yet. Um,
No, not
where
really.
where I kind of lament the fact that there's no preview in terms of like can like for us to be able to see what our armors will look like if we want to apply a certain dye color to it. So what I have to do because of there's no preview is that I use a specific dye on my armor and then I save right before I do that and then I use the dye on that armor and I'm like I don't really like it. So then I load back to that previous save. And then I go in the save that I had before I put on that die. Then I go and experiment to see, okay, what about this die? What does this die look like on my armor? And then I apply it, and then I'm like, I don't really like it. So then I have to load back again to the point before I use that die, And then it gets even more tedious because, like, well, what about my other companions? I want to apply these dyes to all their outfits as well. And it gets really granular because you can apply it to your gauntlets, to your boots, obviously the armor itself. Depending on what armor everyone's wearing, it's going to look different for everyone as well. Um, so yeah, it's such a small nitpick, but like that's also moments like that is when I really feel the loading screens too.
I haven't really messed around with this, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't start messing around with them until I think honestly Act 3 is when I really started getting into it. Um, which yeah, it's pretty nice, man. Um, but yeah, that's that's pretty much all that I've been playing these past weeks. Baldur's Gate 3. Um, so let's start moving into some of these topics, man. Um, I want to talk about Naughty Dog. Um,
All right, let's do it.
so well, actually, a lot has happened. Just generally in the gaming space in terms of like layoffs with with Epic laying off what it was something like 13% of their workforce, right?
It was
Something
around
like
like
that.
600, I think, people.
I think it was more. I think it was like
I mean,
900.
you're probably right. Yeah, you're probably
Yeah,
right.
it was some ridiculous amount.
Honestly,
Um,
that's like going across all of America at this point. Even at my job, where they don't really, they don't really like laying off at where I work at is like pretty much rare, and they did that for a lot of people. So it's
yeah,
going around,
it's
man. Like just like COVID, it's going around. No one likes
yeah,
this shit.
yeah, and obviously tons of studios are being affected by this. Um, Yeah, Mediatonic, who's within Epic, right? Like they got hit with layoffs. A lot of those teams. Um, I'm trying to think like, what's their name? Embracer, Embracer, man. They've been
Embracer
going.
has a fucking axe and a guillotine ready for everybody
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
They're I
Um,
think they're trying to sell off the not Bioware, the Borderlands devs a
well,
Gearbox.
I think yeah. I don't know if they. I think they did already. I
I
think
don't know
they
if they
did. I
did,
think they
but
did already.
I heard that they're putting up putting them up for sale. They're putting up on the tag sale right now, which is
Um,
wild. We're talking about the guys who made the Borderlands games, man.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
crazy.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, Crystal Dynamics also had a ton. I mean, which is
That's not surprising, honestly.
within what's their name?
Embracer.
Embracer. So yeah. Yeah, Blizzard also recently had a ton. Roblox as well. Just a ton,
Roblox.
ton. Yeah,
That's all.
Roblox, man.
Jesus. Okay.
So yeah, and then obviously we found out recently that Naughty Dog had their own round of layoffs, but this one I feel like context is important and it's a little different here because it was 25 contractors um which
Yep.
whether we like it or not, contractors are given the short end of the stick in a lot of these things, in the sense of that, like, hey, like, we have the right, and I put right in quotations, because it's in the contract, that you are going to be contracted to work with us for a specific amount of time, right? Like, let's just say
For
your
hire
contract is
workers. Yep.
right. Your contract is up, for instance, in October, but we have the right to cut that contract short whenever we deem necessary, right? And in this case, their contracts were cut short. Um, so these 25 contractors, which I believe majority were in quality assurance, you could put two and two together that they were contracted specifically on the Last of Us multiplayer game. Um, so reportedly, these and all of this is, not confirmed or whatever. So we're just working purely off of, what is being reported. Um, Reportedly, the Last of Us multiplayer game has been put on ice. 25 of these quality assurance developers have been laid off from that project. I forget what this guy's specific title was, but he was like he was like one of the guys on like the monetization specifically. He had just come over from Epic Games. He had been at Naughty Dog for something like 10 to 11 months. He just left the studio. Um, you take all of this to mean that this project is indeed in trouble, probably in dire straits, I would say. Um, so first, let's talk about that first. The Last of Us Online, which has never really been like officially like announced or revealed, right? Which is just like
No, no,
which
they
I
they have they have.
no
That's
no because we haven't seen this thing.
oh,
we
stop
we
it, come
haven't
on. It's
Macho.
you don't see a baby test out the freaking womb, but you know it's there. Not Walt. I'm
Which
sorry. So I feel like I always argue with Walt that I called you Walt. That you know a baby is there. It's. I'm not gonna get into how a baby grows inside a womb, but you know what I'm getting at. Sammy just looked at me. You know exactly where I'm getting at. We know it exists. Naughty
no
Dog just wanted to hide what the sex reveal was. All right, we know it's
oh
there.
what
We know that the baby is there, but
no
they're trying to put
obviously
it.
we know.
Yeah, they're trying to put it in the cryo tube right now,
No,
saving it for
obviously,
later.
obviously, we know it exists. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying that, like,
Okay.
in terms of like PlayStation coming out and at a state of play, or coming out in a showcase and being like, "Bam, here is your first look at what The Last of Us multiplayer is." We never got that. That's what I'm saying. We never got like an official reveal of we don't even know what this thing is called. And that is like that's one of the issues that I just wanted to bring up, is that like I really wish we didn't know about this thing. And just right from the jump, the way that this thing was like pseudo announced was like really weird. Like I don't know, man. I really wish that we wouldn't have known about, and this is what like I was giving Sony a lot of credit for recently, and what I always talk about is that like in this PS5 generation, they've been really good about not doing this exact thing. When you talk about God of War Ragnarok, Horizon, Returnal, Ratchet and Clank, Demon Souls, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2, like all their first party games have been like revealed and released in a pretty short window. They don't typically do the Ghost of Tsushima is announced in 2017 and it comes out in 2020, or Last of Us Part 2 is announced in 2016, comes out in 2020, right? These sort of like long windows from like announcement to release. We don't like, at most we get that has shortened to like 2 year windows, which I praise them for because it's been really really good, and I think it's worked out for them really really well. This has been like the one outlier, if I can even call it that, because again, they haven't formally announced what this thing even is. Which I don't know. So let me give the mic to you, man. Well, hearing that the game is on ice, I know you've been on Naughty Dog's ass for the longest time.
Absolutely.
What do you think about this?
I mean, it's at this point it doesn't exist, and the last time it doesn't exist anymore. The last time we talked about this, I said before that this thing is getting canceled. I stand by that. I
Mm.
really do. Because and here's my transition into like what it can actually turn into. They're gonna kill it and then revive it when The Last of Us Part 3 comes out. Whether it's by PS6 generation or by the end of the PS5 generation, I hope and pray that at least whatever factions turns into, it's gonna be shipped with Last of Us Part 3. Because
Mm.
at this point it's an absolute mess from what it was turning into. It's becoming more ambitious. Like they're falling under the Naughty Dog spell of like our project are too ambitious that we had to keep scrapping, going back to the drawing board, then reiterating, scrapping, going back to the drawing board, and then trying to innovate whatever they were turning into. And at this point, it's frustrating, man. Especially as a factions fan like myself that put hundreds of hours into that multiplayer on PS3 and PS4. I beat the, I got all the factions multiplayer trophies on PS4 before actually playing the single player on PS4. That tells you how much I'm a fan of it. And I'm a single player guy. So the fact that from speaking from my end, that's like says enough on like how much I loved it and was anticipating what the next iteration of factions was. And the thing that really sucks about it so that they could have just given us regular factions with an extra mode or two, some more guns, maybe a couple of cool animations, maybe a new game mode, right? They could have just done that with for Last of Us Part 2 and we would have been happy. But now we're kind of just sitting here waiting for what we don't even know what. And that's the most frustrating part of it. And I kind of just wish that they stuck to the guns and just released like regular factions and then do the Naughty Dog thing, which was go super ambitious with it. Because now we were just kind of now as a fan, I'm just like super frustrated. I don't want to hear anything from them until it has a release date and some gameplay. And for all I know, that could be until the end of the generation or next. And it is what it is at this point. So I'm not even gonna get upset over it anymore. It
Um,
sucks. And to your point too, when they laid off the contract workers, right? Weren't all of them quality assurance employees?
yeah.
Yeah. So that tells me that the fact that they laid off QAs means that they are going back to the drawing board again for this thing. That they don't need people to play test it, so lay them off because we got to go back to square one. And yeah, it is what it is. At this point, it's just Naughty Dog wants to do more focus on the television shows and release remasters and stuff like that than actually give us a new experience. So it is what it is.
Um, I'm not I'm not gonna fault them for being like ambitious and like because that's just like I feel like that's what we ask of teams in general. Like we want them to go all out. We want them and like I I hear you when you say that that fans would have liked just having same old factions. You add in an extra mode or whatever, and you call it a day. But like I I'm not gonna fault them for wanting to expand upon that, for making it bigger, for making it more grand, to have to integrate more of a story into it with characters and things like that. Like they were really trying to blend in more of like what they are known for alongside like on top of factions and like sometimes like having ambitions and big lofty goals like that they don't work out but like fuck like at least you try. um, and so that's why I'm kind of like, if you're Sony, like you put a ton of like investment into this, you put a ton of money into this and time. I think you cut your losses before it gets even worse because it seems like this is very quickly going to become just a endless well that you're throwing money into, and at some point you need to stop before it gets worse for you, you know? Um Yeah,
Yeah,
I think at some point you gotta be honest with yourselves and cut your losses, which I think they're not afraid of doing. Obviously, Sony is no stranger to cutting cutting off projects when things don't work out. That's just the nature of the business for a lot of businesses, to be honest. You take a risk and a chance at doing things like this, and most of the time they're not going to work, you know? So the biggest thing is that you can nip this at the bud here and now before it gets worse, or you can have something like a Skull and Bones where like Ubisoft just keeps throwing money, more money, more money, more money at the problem, and the problem's not getting any better, right? Every time that they show this thing off, it gets laughed out of the building because of for XYZ or whatever, right? You could be like that and release this game and it's gonna be dead on arrival where Sea of Thieves is or not Sea of Thieves but Skull and Bones is obviously gonna have that issue where it's just like you have this endless amount of time and investment into it and it is without question gonna be dead on arrival. Or you could just you could cut your losses here and now before you inevitably reach that point. Um, so
yeah.
yeah.
No, the thing is, Press Alpha made it like a point too that he doesn't. He not that he doesn't want, but if it's just like another kind of multiplayer game, then it's whatever. They want more. He wants more like an involvement, and that's what Walt said too when we last talked about this, and what you're reiterating too that it's okay to be ambitious. You know, if you don't, why not try like the biggest thing you can with all ideas you can throw at it and see what happens. And that's where I think that just like the fan base is kind of split on that aspect, where people like me or the fans like me that for factions just they just want something to play. You know, they want the same multiplayer, but it's a little better. Well, whereas more it seems like, or other fans just want an involvement of that multiplayer mode. So, but at the same time, what is Naughty Dog? What are they gonna do with it? What do they really want? And it seems like they had an idea, and then Bungie came in and completely shat on it, and now they're back to square one. So who knows what they're gonna be doing? And yeah, it
Well,
is what it is.
this kind of leads into uh the bigger discussion around Naughty Dog and the reason why I really wanted to talk about this with you today is that factions is and I know it's important to people. I know you really loved it. I have no real connection to it, so like this story to me is kind of like a whatever. The thing that I really wanted to talk about was like the state of Naughty Dog. Um, they're a company, they're a studio that has made games that mean a lot to me in the past. You know, whether it is from Jack to the Uncharted series, obviously The Last of Us. They are still arguably, maybe you can say Santa Monica has taken the crown from them, or Insomniac or Gorilla, but they are still arguably like Sony's crown jewel. We know that Neil is working on on a project. Um, my I'm feeling a little frustrated, in the sense of we had all this stuff with the 25 layoffs, the online project reportedly being on ice, and then immediately the next day we have this leak of The
Another
Last of
leak
Us
from
Part
Naughty
2,
Dog.
The Last of Us Part 2 being remastered,
Another
which we
leak,
have
man.
which we have had rumors forever now talking about this potential director's cut of The Last of Us Part 2 being in development. We've kind of heard about it through the ether for a really long time.
Yeah, Gustavo kind of leaked it.
Him too, that was like the most recent thing that we heard.
Hmm.
But I think even like Jason Schreier when he made that original article about Sony only cares about blockbuster games, blah blah blah. That article, I think he like talked about that in that article as well. Um, I'm I'm frustrated in this being not even this being a thing, and you may need to be patient with me because I have like just a lot of thoughts that like I just need to vent, I think. Um I'm not frustrated or disappointed about The Last of Us Part 2 remaster being a thing. I guess I'm just more frustrated in the fact that it feels like, and this is coming from someone who loves The Last of Us. I love both games dearly. I love the show. I love the characters. I love the world. I love everything about The Last of Us. It just feels like we are in this rut of The Last of Us, you know? And and this being a studio who is no stranger to new IP, right? From going from Crash to Jack to Uncharted to La- doing The Last of Us when they were still doing Uncharted, right? Like how ballsy of a move that is, right? Um, I just and then the rumblings that Neil's project is potentially The Last of Us Part 3. I I'm really frustrated about this. Because it doesn't give me a chance to like miss this IP because I feel like I'm constantly still in it. You know what I mean? Um, there's something to be said, and they're doing the same thing with Horizon, which I'm picking up on, which is starting to frustrate me as well. There's something to be said about missing franchises, right? The fact that we haven't gotten an Uncharted since 2017, the fact that we haven't gotten an Infamous since 2014, um, the fact that we hadn't gotten a mainline Ratchet and Clank game since 2013 made Rift Apart so. When we first saw that, when it was first revealed in 2020, why people like stood up out of their seats for that is because we had time to miss that franchise because we hadn't gotten a proper follow up to Ratchet and Clank in years, right? And so my big thing is that like and why people are starting to feel the way that they do about The Last of Us, despite it still being a huge gargantuan IP for Sony and Naughty Dog, is that we haven't gotten a chance to miss it because it is everywhere. It's that goddamn Universal too, you know? Like I don't know how you feel about this as well. Again, I'm just kind of like I don't really have much like an order to my thoughts. I'm just kind of like venting right now. But fuck man, I'm just feeling really frustrated about just like us swimming in this IP. And I feel like also like as a studio, like there has to be a point too where like do you guys like are you guys happy with this? Like, don't you guys want to feel like, don't you guys want to work on something new as well? Just like at a creative standpoint, like fuck, man. This is nowhere near like a one-to-one comparison, but like I have been working on my book for 4 years. I'm just now starting, to outline book two of this series, and it is so refreshing to be working on something new, even though it's still like part two of a series. But like I cannot imagine working on one franchise for over 10 years. You know what I mean? So like just at a creative standpoint, like fuck, like don't you guys want to be like working on something new as well? Like I don't know. How do you feel about like just the fact of like Last of Us Part 2 remaster, the fact that we have more remasters slash remakes than Last of Us proper games. Have you come to that to that realization
Wow.
that we have the Last of Us, the original Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, and then
Wow.
Last of Us remastered, Last of Us Part 1, which is the remake, and then Last of Us Part 2 remastered. It's insane to me. So how do you feel about just I guess just this kind of issue that I'm starting to feel in the sense of like there is a lot of Last of Us going on and not much else with this studio.
Yeah, it feels like wasted talent, honestly. And especially with this PS5 generation. And that's why they're bottom tier developer for me in terms of PlayStation first party studios. Just I feel like I can't get excited for what they're going to be doing because I already know what's going to happen. And that's why I'm hoping that they aren't working on Last of Us Part 3.
Me
But
too. Me too.
but they probably are. And yeah, it's honestly disheartening to kind of see like there's it. I don't know how they feel in the studio, but like just like, as a fan standpoint, it's disheartening to not it's disheartening to not get excited about whatever Naughty Dog's making because I know it's gonna be Last of Us, and it takes out the surprise and the allure of it. I don't know, like either way, they're really talented, but I just wish that they could put that talent as something new and different than what we all are expecting, and everyone wants Last of Us Part 3. We're probably in the minority here when it comes to all that stuff, right? Because
Right,
everyone
absolutely.
always asks about Part 3, whether it's coming, whether they're working on it, and that's what everyone wants to hear, and that's going to be the major headlines. But, man, like, I would love to see something different from them, or
Yeah.
something return from their catalog, or whatever Corey's working on, right? Like, that's something that we have no idea about, and something we can get completely excited about because we know that Corey has a great mind when it comes to making games.
And we know that it is more than likely a new IP with God of War being finished for the time being.
Right, exactly. So, and that's
And
why,
really quickly, that's way more exciting than like a God of War 3 because it's something brand new from Cory Barlog. That's what makes that so much more exciting than a brand new God of War.
right, and the thing is, I was talking to Flame about it too, because he sent me the link about God of War potentially getting like a
DLC.
DLC or like a sequel or something like that. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, like like I was like I was fine with Ragnarok, like I was fine with The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last of Us show. Like I don't want Last of Us Part 3 at this point. I want something new and different from them, and we're not going to be getting that, at least seemingly. So it's, yeah, they've been Naughty Dog has been my bottom my first phone Sony first party tier list since the PS5 generation, just in bringing in remasters and remakes that I, as a fan of them, didn't want. Didn't really care for. Like for Last of Us Part 2 remaster, I asked for that, but we got the 60 FPS patch, and that's really all I wanted.
Hmm.
If they're gonna bring a remastered, bring in something old and give it the $70 plus charge, how are they gonna justify that this time? Because people called out Last of Us remake, and look how that turned out. I mean, the sales are still good because of the show, but still, and it's gonna be good because of Last of Us Part 2 season, or Last of Us season 2. But this seems like more of just a business move than it is a creative move.
Yeah.
And that's what Naughty Dog seemingly has been like on that train all PS5 generation, just straight up business moves as they cook. As people are saying, let them cook, let them cook. They're gonna make something great. At this point, it's fucking burnt, dog. So make a new dish. That's all I care about right now. So
Yeah. Um, and look, we could be completely wrong. Like,
yeah,
come,
like
uh,
alerts here. We could be completely wrong.
and
So
and and here's and here's the thing too is that like I have no doubt that Last of Us Part 3, if it is truly their next game, is gonna be amazing. It's gonna be it's probably gonna
yeah,
get all the awards. It's gonna be like a 90 plus on Metacritic. I have no doubt about that.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, just in terms of like, man, like, and I also think that like context of like where we currently are in like the gaming industry matters a lot because like I feel like back in the PS3 era where you could put out an entire trilogy in a single generation, I would have been okay. Like, oh, Naughty Dog's next game is Last of Us Part 3. Okay, cool. Yeah, sure, let's do it because like there would have only been 2 years in between each game, right? And then you would have the confidence that okay, now it's time for them to move. They would move on to something brand new. But like because there is so much time in between these games, right? Going from the original game 2013 to part 2 in 2020, and now part 3. If part 3 is their next game, you would assume that's like a 2026, 2027 game, right? That is a long time to just be on a single franchise, and that's my main thing is that like there's nothing in between that, right? It is just The Last of Us for all this time, and that's the kind of frustrating part about it
Well, that's
for me.
why I love what Square Enix is doing with Final Fantasy VII, where they're focusing on one console and they're going to bring out that trilogy within 10 years, right? The first game released 2020. We're getting Rebirth in 2023 or 2024, the beginning of it. And we have to assume that the third game is going to be at least 2026. That's That's amazing for Square Enix. The ones that
Yeah,
announced freaking Kingdom Hearts in 2013 and didn't come out until 2019.
yeah.
You know, and then in between all that, just to gestate, the fan base, they want more. They releasing mobile stuff, which is, with Evercry is actually pretty good, and then other things in between, stuff like that. And then we have Final Fantasy 16 and then Theater Rhythm. So like, I wish Naughty Dog kind of had that sort of same workflow, or even an Insomniac workflow, right, where they had Spider-Man, then they had Miles Morales and Ratchet and Clank. Now we're going to Spider-Man 2, and then the next is Wolverine. So
I
like,
mean,
yeah.
I wish every studio would have that, but they are a rarity, not the rule.
But it feels out of place for PlayStation because
In what way?
because they have the resources and it seems like not the manpower. Well, I mean, I want to say the manpower, but again, I'm overstepping here. But regardless, it feels like they have all the help in the world, being Sony's crown jewel.
But I'm not gonna. It's tough because I'm not gonna blame them for that because it's like we can point to pretty much all their like literally Insomniac is the exception because every other studio, look at Sucker Punch, man. We got from the gap from Second Son to Tsushima, it was 6 years. We are looking at Tsushima 2, possibly 2025. That is 5 years in between games for them. Santa Monica as well. They take 4 to 5 years. Gorilla, the gap from Zero Dawn to Forbidden West was 3 for 5 years. five
But
years
but mind
for a
you,
sequel.
we got the what was it, the Horizon Zero Dawn complete package with
I'm
the
not counting
but
that.
with the, you got to with the DLC because they released a DLC, and then
But
the PC release that they worked on as well, which they had to take devs off of Forbidden West to work on that.
sure, but then you could say the same thing with Naughty Dog with porting Last of Us Part 1 on PC, which yeah, of course yeah, it was broken,
Yeah,
but like I'm not
I'll give
gonna
you that. I'll give you that too.
I'm not gonna count that they did. It's not like they like Gorilla like released like a smaller bite-sized like new IP in between Zero Dawn to and Forbidden West. All I'm saying is that all of these studios, all studios and game development in general, take about as long as Naughty Dog takes with their games. I mean, even look at Remedy. Remedy, I was just thinking about this the other day, but like the gap between Control and Alan Wake 2 has been 4 years, you know? Like that's just Zelda. Look at Zelda. You can put to
Oh,
Bethesda.
don't do that to them. Don't do that to Zelda. That's ingenuity right there. That's the God's given
Yeah.
grace right there.
Yeah, so like I'm not gonna blame them
But
for
even
that.
then, what do they need to have like a workshop on how Insomniac does how they do their workflows? Because
I mean,
we get all this stuff about crunch from Naughty Dog, but we haven't heard a single thing about Insomniac. And you would
yeah,
think
but
that they will be crunching of all devs.
yeah, but at the same time, it's like I think the thing with them is that like Insomniac and I obviously they have a lot more. They have their own like secret sauce that they do or whatever that works for them. But at the same time, they also have multiple locations. Like they have their Burbank Insomniac studio, and they also have their North Carolina
Yeah.
Insomniac studio.
Hmm.
Um, but then also like the gap between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, like guess what? That's 5 years, to make a full-fledged sequel for that game. And obviously we had Miles Morales in between that, which was like, a game you can beat in 5 to 8 hours.
But
Um,
man, it was so
but
much fun.
yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. All I'm saying is that all these teams, regardless of the manpower that you can put behind a game or money or whatever, like these things are going to take forever to make.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, again,
Um,
it's just I wish that whatever workshop they can do for Insomniac and their workflow can be applied to other PlayStation studios. Just because, again, we're at this point now where like, what has Naughty Dog been working on for the past 10, and by the time Last of Us Part 3 comes out, it's gonna be 15 years. You said it before, man. That's a long time. That's frustrating just to see from one studio that can make great things
and
out of
we'll
nothing.
see,
Out of
and we'll
nothing.
see and we'll see because Naughty Dog has shifted to a multi-team studio now. They're no longer And I remember Ted Price and Evan Wells, who is still currently the president of Naughty Dog, but he's like retiring.
Yeah, when does he go out?
Um,
Actually,
what was that?
when does he go out? Like, when is he? When's he
I'm not
done?
sure. I'm actually not sure. But they were having a conversation about this exact thing where like Evan Wells was like, man, like you just talking about like the rate that they're able to put out games, that Insomniac is able to put out games, um, and but yeah, for the majority of like their studio's history, like Naughty Dog has been like a one project studio, and even when they tried to do a split off into two teams, which they did for they had a team working on Uncharted 3 while they had a second team kind of incubating what The Last of Us would be, and then when Uncharted 3 shipped, that team that team moved over to The Last of Us. They said that they struggled with that was very very difficult for them to do. Um, and then but right now they have found a way to be a multi-team studio again, because they actually have producers that they actually have like multiple producers at Naughty Dog
Oh
now,
right,
which they
yeah, when they do that producer hiring spree. Yeah, we're just like, they didn't
right.
have a producer this whole
Yeah, they
time.
didn't. They
Yeah.
didn't. Um, but yeah, so that's the thing that I'm wondering as well is that like, and that's the little bit of optimism I have in me is that like they are a multi-team studio now. They're no longer just like we are working on one project at the studio. Once that's finished, then we move on to the next. Like they have multiple things in the oven. I'm a little concerned that are those multiple projects just Last of Us Part 1 remake, Last of Us Part 2 remaster, Last of Us Online, and Last of Us Part 3. I hope to God that's not what they mean by that, and that they actually have like, hey, here's a smaller bite-sized new IP in the works, while our bigger team is focused on The Last of Part 3, and then while we also have a small online team working on Tlu factions. But we just don't know. We just don't know until Sony goddamn shows these projects, you know.
See, and that's where
Um,
I'm glad you brought this back over, because that's where I wanted to actually not debate, but just sort of like ping at you for, because they have been really good at just showing a project and releasing it pretty soon afterwards. I give them all the commendation for that too, because I think that's something to really strive for. But now we're at this point, so we don't really have a lot to be excited for in 2024 or
no, no,
2025 or 2026.
we don't.
And I feel like
You know,
that's a
like
big negative, and that's feel like it's a really big negative at this point.
yeah, I agree. It really feels weird that Naughty Dog released Part 2 in 2020, and it just feels like 3 years later we would know what their next major project is by now. Um, you know, I would say
What
the
we
same.
do, it was that baby in the oven that was Tlu factions.
No, no, but in terms
You
of
know?
like them like showing off and revealing, like even if it's a CGI trailer, like what their next game is. Like the
Oh,
fact that we
okay.
don't even have that, you know, is weird to me. I would even say the same for Sucker Punch, that it's been over 3 years and we still don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously it's Tsushima 2, but like, you know, that we don't even have a teaser, that wasn't showed at the showcase, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the one I'll give you too, where Sucker Punch is in that realm of like we have no idea what's going on, and it's kind of weird at this point.
yeah. Which again, you know, at that last financial report or whatever that they had, that they, you know, Sony did say that hey, we had um a like I don't know what the exact wording was, but let's just say, you know, for the sake of this conversation, that they had like a significant number of first party titles that were delayed into like the next fiscal year or something like that. Um so like does that explain why there were so few first party titles at the showcase? I don't know, maybe, but like I I don't know, man. It just like, and again, like it could work out for them because this is kind of building anticipation for them, because like you have to imagine that like the moment when they do finally put all their cards on the table, you know, where it's like bam, here's what Blue Point is working on. I know it's been 3 years, but here's what Blue Point is working on. Here's what Team Asobi has been working on, after 3 years of not knowing what they've been doing. Here's the next Naughty Dog game. Here's the next Sucker Punch game. Here is what Corey's been up to. When that moment finally comes, it's gonna be crazy because like they have been waiting on all these things, for so long. So like I am excited for when we finally get that day when we see what all these teams have been working on. Hell, Fire Sprite, the team behind the Horizon VR game and the Twisted Metal game that we still haven't seen anything of, which I also thought would be at that last showcase, but wasn't. There was I think a LinkedIn posting recently from someone who I think left that studio, who said like in like their kind of like experience like little timeline of like what they were working on. I think they were like a character artist at Fire Sprite. Their horror adventure game that they're working on, it said that something along the lines of like releasing in 2025. And that's like that horror game which we've talked a little bit about, but it's like that is going to be they without a doubt want to be a powerhouse uh like a powerhouse studio within PlayStation Studios. Like they want to be releasing like these third person super high fidelity narrative driven games, and that's what that horror game is going to be. Like I'm super excited to see what the hell does a horror PlayStation Studios title look like, right? I'm super excited to see that as well. um so we know all these games are in the oven, but for whatever reason, whether it is these delays or games just taking longer to make, we it just it is getting a little frustrating to wait as long as we're waiting, but yeah.
At least we have games to play in between.
I
You
I
know,
suppose.
that's it. I mean, I don't know about you, man, but I'm eating good with some of the stuff. That's why that's what the Final Fantasy fanatic is happy. He's fed and he's at a buffet right now. And then the fact there's Kingdom Hearts 4 on the way, and then yeah, man. So either way,
And the thing
it
is,
pays to not just be a PlayStation first party fan this generation. I will say that.
too is that like once Spider-Man 2 comes out, like
Oof,
we're
baby.
we're all gonna forget about like these issues that we have
No, we're
because
not. No, we're not.
well, because it's gonna be like so like immediately. At least for me, like these concerns that I'm having, once that game comes out, I'm gonna be quickly reminded, like, oh yeah, like despite all these issues I have with PlayStation, they still know how to damn well make a goddamn single player narrative driven game like better than anyone else can,
Yeah, that's why I haven't really, complained a whole lot because, like, in between when PS5 released and now, we've had amazing games that I loved playing, and
Yeah,
I don't need to list them off. You already know what it is. So
yeah,
at this point, just waiting until the next one, and then biding that time is the Resident Evil 4s, the Zeldas, and Baldur's Gates, and yeah, it's Final Fantasy 7. Like, come on, man. Like, I got no reason to complain, on the fact that they're turning out games very slowly.
yeah. And I think that was really felt this year, um,
Absolutely.
for sure.
I mean, Spider-Man 2, though, when that drops, oh boy,
Yeah,
13 more days. I can't wait to to play as Miles with his default black guy haircut, uh, and see was Sam Peter Parker just lying down the streets throwing out finger guns to old jazz music. I'm excited, bro. I'm so pumped. And then
yeah,
we are Venom. Like, come on, man. It's gonna be so dope, man. I'm so excited.
yeah.
Them deluxe
Um,
edition suits. Ooh, boy. I put down an extra $10. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't care
oh
about them
man.
skill points. I care about those extra suits with the what was it, the custom designs from different artists. Oh, they look so cool.
Oh man, they got him. They got him.
They got me, bro. They got you too. They got you
Nah,
too.
I haven't pre-ordered it.
Why not? What's wrong with you?
Those suits don't look that good to me. I
Hey,
was like, eh.
yo, hey, this
You saw that
god,
purple one? You saw that purple one?
that
That
purple one
was
looking,
ugly.
man, you
That was
ugly,
ugly.
you ugly, bro. You too.
But yeah, I guess. Do you have anything else that you want to say about the Naughty Dog situation? Just like the frustration that we're feeling right now.
Well, I hope Neo stops going to all the Halloween horror nights and
Hey, let that
gets.
man live, man.
Get, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm jealous because Walt, because I know he's been posting on Instagram, and Walt's been going like every other weekend with his girl, and I'm so
Yeah.
jealous because it looks a lot of fun. But no, man, I just hope that this studio gets back on its feet and starts pumping out great games like we love them to do. So
We're used to.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sucks, but what can you do? Jealous other
It,
than
it
just
just
wait.
it just feels so weird, like not having like it just feels like we would know what their next game is at this point. Like we like not that we would only know, but we would have seen it by this point. You know?
Yeah. At this point, I'd
Um
rather know and wait than not know and
yeah,
wait.
yeah.
You know?
I I I think originally I was kind of against that, but like I'm starting to feel that now too. Just because like I feel like I was too understanding in a way. But now, like, especially after the showcase and the fact that we still didn't get the answers that I was sure we would have gotten, I'm starting to kind of feel that antsiness too. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, man.
I don't know, man. I'm definitely feeling
Burnt out.
frustrated.
Burnt out.
Not burnout, but it's just frustrated. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, fill that time with Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed Mirage. So it is, I think last time I checked, it was like at a 77, 78 on Metacritic.
Mm.
I'm assuming you don't have much interest in playing this, right?
No, yeah, I treat Assassin's Creed like a flavor of the week, depending on the destination. If I like what I see, then I go for it. And since this one was in Baghdad, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it looks too similar to the other games, so I'm skipping it.
Yeah,
Especially
so I mean,
Revelations.
I'm not gonna play it either. As I don't need to judge this up again. But yeah, I've been over Assassin's Creed since Unity. But I wanted to kind of open this up into a larger discussion, and also I guess like to talk about like the game itself. Reviews have kind of said that like I think the consensus I'm getting from the reviews is that like, hey, it's cool that it's a return to form, or to its roots, but it feels like it doesn't take those roots and like evolve them in any meaningful or interesting way. Like it feels like it's very much like, yes, we've returned to roots, and that's all we kind of did with it. Like we just kind of stopped there. Like we didn't really do anything to like use the roots of Assassin's Creed as a jumping off point to really like make it an evolution of that formula, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
yeah, so like that's kind of the consensus that I've gotten from the game. Other than the fact of like, um, the emphasis on stealth is nice. Um, one of the cool things that I've heard is that like almost being in combat encounters is like discouraged. Like it's a bad thing that should only be like a last resort, and I think that's really cool. And the fact that it's like, hey, in a one-on-one fight, you'll be good, but the moment that like three guards show up, four, five, you're in trouble. Like you should absolutely run at that point. I think that's really cool because that more in line fits with the assassin fantasy. I feel like. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I really appreciate that. Um, they actually have like a dead city for parkour to actually like sing and work this time around, unlike the most recent trilogy where there's big spaces of like open fields that you have to go on horseback in order to reach these cities to do parkour. um
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly,
so that's
this
cool.
release feels a lot like Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, where we're expecting it to be like this really cool evolution of the series, or in this case, like a return to form, but a little more evolved. And a little bit better know-how, but
Mm.
there's not really much to it, and it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, and I guess like so those are like the highlights that I've heard. Um, but in terms of like characters and story, has fallen flat for a lot of people. Um, specifically, and like I feel like I've called this out before. But there's just something about the faces and like the character like animations and stuff like that in these most recent Assassin's Creed games that just look off.
Hmm.
They just don't look good, you know. Um,
Done by the
they
B team.
but I would even say that for like Valhalla as well. Like those faces just don't look good. And then also like if you remember, and like an old school Assassin's Creed fan too. Like if you remember those games, like they actually had like for lack of a better term, like cinematography, like a direction in their cutscenes. Like characters were actually like moving around and expressing themselves, and there was action set pieces and stuff like that. But like in this game and in the newer trilogy as well, like a lot of the cutscenes are just like just two characters like standing, like you know what I mean, like they just standing and talking to each other, like because like a lot of these games are just like dialogue options, you know.
Yeah.
So most of the games is just like you looking at another character and just having those back and forth conversations. Whereas those other games, like it was very much like there was an actual like direction in the cutscenes, right? Like they were like you were looking at much more interesting things on screen versus these new games. Um, and from what I've seen, this game, even though this game doesn't have dialogue options, this game very much is like the newer trilogy in the sense of like the cutscenes you watch are boring, man. That there's like no interesting direction to them, that it's mostly just two people talking to each other and not in an interesting way, right? Because like we've played games where like, it's characters just talking to each other, but they're done in an interesting way. Like even Cyberpunk, right? When you're talking to a character and you're sitting down at a bar, like they are like Idris Elba, right? When in the DLC, like he is expressive, he is emoting, he's like either like picking up like a glass of wine or whatever, and like they feel like real people, not just like robots standing and just having like a short conversation with each other, like Mirage and the other new AC games are kind of doing. So
Yeah, that's how I felt with Final Fantasy 7 Remake, right? Where I was like, oh, they are flexing with the character emotions and just like
yeah,
they thought about every little detail about how a character reacts, how they're talking, whatever the case may be. And you notice it when you go to other games or like I haven't seen Mirage, but what you're saying like Mirage, where you're just like, yeah, there's something lacking here. You can,
yeah,
it's absolutely you can see it with the long with the a mile apart. So that's kind of disappointing because
yeah,
especially for Assassin's Creed where they like before they have really focused on a cinematic experience, especially with Ezio. Right, he had all the charm in the world. Is really because of his face expressions and the voice acting, and yeah, it seems like that's kind of lost in later games. But I will say though, Syndicate was the first one that did surprise me because of the voice actors and how expressive they were, and that's why I also attached to that game and why I liked it so much. But I didn't get
yeah.
that sense with Origins, and I didn't play Odyssey or anything like that. But apparently, people really like Odyssey, so I don't know.
Yeah, and what's his name? Skill Up was he kind of like brought the comparison of like Guardians of the Galaxy and how good the facial animation, just like cutscenes in terms of just like characters walking around, and like you never felt bored when you were hopping into a cutscene watching these characters do what they do. And he just kind of used that as a comparison against Mirage, where it's just like it's a night and day difference. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like consensus what I've been hearing, but I wanted to bring this to a wider discussion about the Assassin's Creed franchise in the sense of like so they tried out the massive open world pseudo RPG 100-hour game trilogy. Um and now with this game, they're kind of found a middle ground of like, yes, we're bringing it back to the roots, but there's still a little bit of the new trilogy stuff in here, peppered in throughout. Um, so I guess I wanted to ask you, what in the future? number one, do you like prefer them to kind of stick like do they have something here with this formula that they continue to iterate on in the future, or should they go back to the open world RPG stuff? And also, what ideas or ways do you think that they could like like take the old formula that they have that they're using again in Mirage and like have an evolution with that old formula to make it more interesting, uh, in the future. Like, what do you think they could possibly do to make that old formula interesting again?
Oh man, that's that's such a loaded question. Um,
Yeah,
I feel like they should just keep going with the tight experiences.
mm,
Make them cinematic and make them what they were before, or at least what people imagined them back then, and just going back to the root of having of rooting for your characters. You know
yeah,
that because what made Assassin's Creed so great wasn't just like the stealth combat or the stealth and the combat. It was also just the lively expressiveness of the world, which, to be fair, they've done really well throughout all the games. But what's really lacking is a character to root for and to really vibe with, and that most people love. So, I think that just has to go back to storytelling, just good
yeah,
old storytelling, and then take what you got from the parkour and Unity, and even if you have to steal some gameplay ideas when it comes to stealth or to combat, just put the Ubisoft, mark on it, then go for it, man. But honestly,
the Ubisoft stench.
Ubisoft stench instead of turn that to a bouquet of flowers. Uh, but yeah, I think it really has just to go back to storytelling because that's what Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 really emphasized. And not to say that they not to say that they strayed away from that core detail or core of about the Assassin's Creed games, but it's definitely the quality is definitely lacking, and it's been like that since probably Black Flag.
Yeah, um, I agree that they definitely need to kind of return to like first of all like characters that I care about, you know. Even though from what I've heard about Origins, they really did well with Bayek, him and his wife Aya were really two great
Oh yeah,
characters to
Aya
follow.
was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but like on top of that, also like I feel like they have a good enough um like foundation in terms of like the parkour. Um, Yeah, like just like the parkour fantasy, but then like I feel like if you remember the black box missions from Syndicate and from Unity, do you remember what those were?
No, I mainlined those games.
Um, so the black box essentially was like your main assassination targets where like you would have a target and it would give you this like zoom out of like the entire like palace or like the hospital like where they were in, and it'd be like, oh, you have like these multiple like little ways to get inside or these multiple opportunities to assassinate that target in like a really cool cinematic way. I don't know if you remember like the guy in like the mental hospital in Syndicate that like you could like be like in taken in the little cart or whatever, and you can have like the blanket like over you at makeup, and then like it would do this little cut scene that like when the doctor's about to like do a procedure on you, you like take off the blanket and you surprise him and you assassinate him like that. Um, I don't know if you remember that.
I'll be real with you, cheese. I don't remember shit.
Okay, okay. But it was basically just like it was basically their attempt at trying to be Hitman. But in Unity and Syndicate, it was basically like here is a palace, for instance. You can go inside it however you want, but there's like these pre-scripted ways of like, hey, this one guard who's like walking the perimeter of the place has a key that opens this secret hatch on the top of the roof. If you go to that garden, you steal the key, then you can access that hatch, and bam, that's your way inside. Or there's an open window on the side of the building that you can access, and you can get in the palace that way, right? It was kind of like that. They brought those back from Mirage, but the problem is that it's very much like you have three ways of accomplishing or of reaching your target. Um, and when you compare that to Hitman, it feels like you have an infinite number of ways to kill your target in those levels, right?
Yeah, that's why I feel so satisfied with the Hitman series. Oh gosh, what is on our screen? That's a busty Japanese woman. Holy
Oh
shit.
God.
The man who erased his name.
No.
Sorry, I was getting really distracted when you were talking. I was like,
Yeah,
"Geez,
it's
this
fun.
trailer is going all good, all out." Yeah. Case in point, I feel really satisfied with Hitman games. I feel like I don't have to play any other stealth game but that.
And so that's my thing that I wanted to bring up is that like those missions feel so bare bones and like so limited in comparison to Hitman. That and I wrote about this when I was writing with Lords of Gaming, is that I feel like Hitman is the Assassin's Creed game I always wanted, in the sense of like I I feel like I'm really encouraged to experiment and find a way to my target in any way that I see fit, and that game allows me to really just express myself and experiment and try different things. And even though some encounter or approaches may not work, that's okay. Like at least I tried it, and I can build off of the things that didn't work and find new ways that can work. I really hope that like Assassin's Creed doesn't just dip their toe in that, like try to do with the black box missions and Unity, Syndicate, and Mirage, but like go all out with it, man. Like don't half-ass it. Like I I really like it feels like they've always scratched the surface in terms of like what being an assassin is. And like aesthetically, yeah, you always look the part, but like gameplay wise, I don't know if I've ever really felt like I've had the means to really feel like an assassin like I do in Hitman, if that makes sense. Of ways that
Yeah,
go beyond just hiding in tall grass, whistling, waiting for someone to come to you, and then taking them out, putting them in the grass. Like it feels like that's as deep as it ever really goes with Assassin's Creed. And like, there's gotta be more like engaging ways to do it. Like Hitman has found ways to do it recently.
yeah. It's just I don't think they have a direction for that. That's why the open world was like so good for them because that was the answer to Witcher 3.
Hmm.
And it feels like Hitman is such a niche too. Like, but when it comes out, people absolutely love it. Yeah, I don't know. They gotta do some soul searching with that.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to,
Um.
I want them to be. I'm with you. I want them to be Hitman, but Assassin's Creed. But I also want them to be cinematic like they've been before and tell really engrossing stories and a narrative that's there that they've just
Yeah.
really lost on me. You know.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I Assassin's Creed is in a really interesting, I feel like identity crisis, right? Where it's just like, what is next now for Red, Assassin's Creed Red, the
Open world.
Japanese one?
Open
Is
world.
it open world? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like,
They said that one's gonna be their open world game, and they have the mobile game, and yeah. So
and then Hexe, does that one go back to being more like a classic Assassin's Creed game? Like I just don't like. It feels like they just don't have a clear vision where it's like they realize like, oh shit, like this new trilogy aren't really Assassin's Creed games, and you're not really playing an assassin in a lot of these, and we have really lost like what made Assassin's Creed with Origins, Valhalla, and Odyssey. We need to go back to what actually makes these games unique instead of chasing other open world RPGs. Like let's go back to what made Assassin's Creed so special and cool. And now it's like, okay, but let's go back to the games where we're trying to chase The Witcher and the other open world RPGs and stuff like that. So it's just like I don't understand. Like, what are you guys trying to have your cake and eat it too? You guys trying to what we talked about Starfield earlier, trying to be decent at all these different things, but master at none? Like, is that just kind of like the perpetual, like the cycle, the never-ending loop that Ubisoft is gonna find themselves in with Assassin's Creed? Because if that's the case, I don't know if if that's the case, then I don't think there's a re-entry point for me in this franchise again, to be honest.
Well, it's the same conversation with Final Fantasy, right? Of the constant evolution of the series, whether it's good or bad, what people want. And I'm just going to recall what I said about it before, that the series is going to evolve with every entry. It's going to change and it's going to be different. What really matters is not what it was, but what what's the spirit that's lingering in. Because when you play Final Fantasy 16, it's a completely different game from every other Final Fantasy game you're playing, but it still has the spirit of Final Fantasy. When I pick up that controller and I press X to enter into the game, I still feel like I'm playing a Final Fantasy game. And you have to
Yeah.
ask that question to yourself for Assassin's Creed. When you pick up the controller and you play or you're playing Assassin's Creed Mirage, or you're playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate, or Origins, or Unity, do you feel like you're playing an Assassin's Creed? Do you feel the spirit of Assassin's Creed in this game, in this entry? And if the answer is no, then you can walk away. If it's yes,
Yeah.
and you want to stick around, then that's that. That's kind of like my motto. Like, the outward appearances aren't fully what make that series that series. It's also what the series feels like. And if it feels like Assassin's Creed, then it's Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know, man. I'm just kind of like also frustrated on the outside looking in, just like seeing like them honestly just kind of flounder, like trying to find themselves, but like struggle to find themselves for like almost 10 years now.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why I'm frustrated with Naughty Dog. It feels like they're just wasting time.
yeah.
I understand.
Um, but yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Mirage. The game is out. Uh, got decent reviews. So, even though Skill Up said he has it as he does not recommend it. So, um, but yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Mirage. Let's our final topic. Let's talk about Jim Ryan. Jim,
Good old Jimmy.
Jim. Um, he is retiring, man. This came as a shock. It was one of those things where it came as a shock, but then like once you kind of like look into the context of it all, then it kind of makes sense. So yeah, he's retiring. Um, in March of 2024 will be like his last little hurrah. Um, interim CEO is Hiroki Totoki, who is like he's like the head of like all of Sony, so he's gonna be doing a lot for the time being. While Sony Interactive Entertainment finds a new CEO.
My man's gonna need a couple
Um,
more happy end massages for the next couple months.
oh man. But yeah, so I mean, I just want to kind of get your thoughts on. I guess there's a number of ways we can take this because I feel like conversations have already been had and like done to death about oh, who do we want as the new CEO and stuff like that. But um I guess like in terms of like who's next, who see even that sounds kind of boring. I guess like is there someone in mind that you would like to see at the CEO position? And if so, I guess do you want changed? That what change would you like that new CEO to bring is the question.
So I actually answered this question in a kind of funny survey that they posted up, because I think one of them was like, "Who would you want to be the CEO and why?" and stuff like that. And to be honest, I can kind of care less about these kind of conversations,
Yeah,
because
me
my
too.
because my default answer is going to be Shuhei Yoshida, since, well, I'll get into it, and then Jack Tryton, bring him back, and Shaw Layden too. But again, I'm an old head when it comes to PlayStation, so that's why I want these figures to come into power for the future. But the main thing I wanted was the one thing that me and Walt talked about extensively when we did like our State of PlayStation's uh, podcast, and that's just for better communication and to really just. I think the main takeaway out of all of that though is to make it fun to be a PlayStation fan again, man. Make it fun and have better communication overall, and just again have fun with it. And we talked about it before, and you're the devil's advocate. They don't really need to do this kind of stuff. They're on top. They don't need to do all the extra legwork. And yeah, that's completely valid and true, and you're right. But at the same time, this entire PS5 generation, while giving us great games and games that I'll love going back to and replaying, and stuff that I could say is in like my top 10s or my top 20s or whatever, it feels like I'm not having as fun being a PlayStation fan anymore. And it seems like we kind of like lost a little bit of that spirit, a little bit of that zestiness, a little bit about having fun about being a PlayStation fan. And it honestly feel like it's lost. And that's what I want the new CEO to bring. I want them to bring a liveliness. I want to bring a joyful attitude about the future of the company and of what they're going to bring out and of the brand, the same way that Phil Spencer has excitement for the future of his brand, the same way that Doug Bowser has the excitement for the future of Nintendo.
No.
Doug Bowser has. He has. When it comes to his interviews, when it comes to him actually going out there in the events and talking to fans, he's there. Who was Jim Ryan there when they released freaking Horizon Forbidden West, one of their tentpole titles? God of War Ragnarok.
Where? Where would he have been?
Any sort of event that they'll have for the game. Doug Bowser was Man, that's what I'm talking about. Doug Bowser was there when Tears of the Kingdom was dropped. He was dressed to the nines and Tears of the Kingdom merchandise and selling and giving games to the fans there in New York City. That's what I'm talking about. You have the platform. You're one of the biggest gaming brands in the world. Why not live that up? That's because Jim Ryan wasn't about that. He didn't have that kind of energy, which he was alluding to in his retirement like send-off. So that makes sense. But again, I want this new CEO to bring that kind of excitement to that, because it all makes a difference. It really does. And it makes it actually fun in being in an ecosystem. And that's the problem with PlayStation in the past couple of years. It's not fun being in this ecosystem. So that's what I hope the new one brings. I will fight you to death on Doug Bowser. He is out there. He is out there.
I just never see. I feel like Nintendo is very much in the same ilk as Sony. I feel like they both don't really like.
No,
they have both the same energy. I feel like
Nintendo's like a midway point. Like Xbox is all the way out there, whereas Nintendo then PlayStation being like giving you the coastal. Nintendo's out there, man. Doug Bowser's at the events. He's at Nintendo Land. He's doing all this stuff. He's out there and he's talking about games and the excitement that the studios are bringing. It's all there. It's all there.
I guess my biggest point is just like look where that's gotten Xbox. And trying to be like the kumbaya, like we're for the players, and when everyone plays, we all win. Like that, like where has that gotten them? And like
it's gotten them grace for the entire generation, dog.
Has it?
Absolutely. We can rate them over the coals as much as we want, and we have. But it's you can't say that they're not like the bastard of the industry, like a lot of people like to make them out to be.
Okay, but like I guess it's gotten them grace from like journalists and like the hardcore, but they haven't seen that translate to market share. Like I'd argue, like at all. Like has it? Has it moved the needle? And with with Phil Spencer interacting with fanboys on Twitter and hopping onto their podcasts and stuff like that, has that moved the needle in any significant way? I argue it hasn't.
Well, you're using the example of Xbox. Okay. I'm going to rely on the example of Nintendo. Because Xbox is where I think they went really far with it, right? Like they, again, interacting with fanboys and all that kind of stuff. Like that stuff, it's like, whatever. But Nintendo, I think, has found a happy medium with it. Especially since the Reggie left. and that's why I will say that Doug Bowser is actually a good Nintendo CEO and like leader for North America, because he is out there at the events, he is interacting with fans, but not at the point where Phil Spencer's getting on podcasts and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
I want a happy
Yeah.
medium. I don't need my CEO to be. I don't need the CEO to be my best friend. I just want them to be present in the conversation in the landscape, and to show that they kind of give a shit, you know, about what they're doing, and not have Jim Ryan in a in the photo holding a PlayStation controller like he's a freaking toddler. You know, it's I want to step up from Jim Ryan, but not the level of Phil Spencer. Like I want the Phil Spencer passion, but I want the professionalism and the drive for output and great games like Nintendo. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I generally agree that there should be a middle ground between those two. I think it's to be honest, I think it's kind of embarrassing to see Phil Spencer hopping on these podcasts and interacting with fanboys and things like that. Like that's the extreme. Like I definitely wouldn't want that. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said about like for like in Jim's defense, like not everyone has that. Not everyone personality wise is like that, and I think that's okay, you know? Like I think there's been plenty of like gaming CEOs who just also like they for whatever reason, maybe they're just like socially awkward or whatever. I remember the first few Sean Layden press conferences were super awkward. Like he definitely looked like he didn't want to be there, but over time he got used to it, you know? So like I don't know, I think there's something to be said about like for Jim that like he's just not that kind of person and sometimes that's okay.
Yeah,
You don't need to be that front facing like always talking to fans and stuff like that kind of person.
yeah. That's why I don't harbor him too much about that kind of stuff, because as the case in point with his resignation, not resignation letter, with
Oh, Jesus.
with his retirement message, that he doesn't have that kind of energy. He's not built for that. You know,
Yeah.
and it's a lot. It's 100% a lot to deal with, and probably a big mental toll to keep traveling the way that he has, to keep in touch with every studio, and to be at this company for 30 years, to give it his all, and for it to also deal with the challenges of an ever growing industry that literally changes every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I completely understand if he wants to, cash out and live the luxurious life on his yacht. Don't blame him for it. And also don't blame him for like having a different kind of energy and being a no nonsense business for PlayStation. But at the same time, I feel like that kind of has hindered them a little bit, and especially, well, at least with the hardcore fans. Not with like obviously doing good numbers wise and selling the consoles and games and everything. That's all good and dandy, but as I said before, it's not just about putting out great games anymore. It's also having a very relatable and personable image out there. And I can tell you right now that hardcore replacement fans will probably prefer the personality and image of PS3, PS4 versus PS5. Like people miss
Mm.
Kevin Butler and having like sort of like that guy that can like shepherd all like the fans, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So not to say they need that again, but I think it has to be really different from the Jim Ryan era.
We'll see. We'll see. Who because like I mean obviously again we'll see, but I think the two most likely candidates being Lin Tao and Eric Limpel. I don't get that they are that vibe either, to be honest. But we'll see. I think we are well past those days, like those the Kevin Butlers and the Jack Tretton era and all that stuff. Like that was prime example of like those are like moments in time, like a specific period in gaming history called for that kind of stuff. I don't think we are in that any longer. We are
I
well past
disagree,
those
man.
days.
I disagree,
And
man.
who else is like is doing that kind of Kevin Butler kind of like from that era? Like I don't.
Exactly, exactly. That's what sets you apart. That's what's
It
gonna set
bec-
you apart.
but also because like they needed it. They needed something to set themselves apart because they were in trouble in those PS3 days. Now, like it's again like similar to Nintendo, they don't really need to do anything that's too like that rocks the boat too much, because
But
they're good.
that's why I think that's why I think that's a problem and why it's so boring being a PlayStation fan right now.
This sounds like such a mean comment, but like, oh, like boo that that's it's boring that we're getting, like good games and that PlayStation is like on top. Like that's probably there. That's honestly like what they're thinking and why they think that they don't need to do like any of those things anymore.
Yeah, but how long that's really gonna last you until people just like, all right, fine, like you're just a piece of machine in the living room for me.
I mean,
That's not what gaming's been about, man. It's been way more than just a machine in your living room. It's literally what Xbox like fanboys are like so die hard about is about the experience, right? And that's why Xbox has such a strong core fan base, and why PlayStation is more or less all over the place.
I
Like
guess
you know,
I guess that's just where like me and you differ in the sense of just like I've never been that. I've never because I've just have never really had much of like an affinity for like online games. So like I've never really had a deeper connection to like the community of PlayStation in the sense of like that I view PlayStation in that way, you know what I mean? Um
yeah,
so
yeah.
so I guess that's why that stuff doesn't really like I do view PlayStation as just a machine that gives me access to play really really cool games. Like that's where the relationship ends for me, and I don't need much else from it. So I guess that's where like the disconnect or where we differ on this. Um,
Yeah, it's you because you have more like the reasonable reality sort of aspect to it, right? Like this thing is an
yeah,
entertainment machine, so entertain me
yeah,
no matter what. I don't need anything else from that. Whereas, yeah, I did grow up with PlayStation fans being part of my family or even friends, right? All of us getting the PSP when Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep dropped, and I'll say this first and foremost, I was always a PlayStation or a Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy fan before I was a PlayStation fan, and that's living on to this day. But it all is tied around what device we played it on, and that was the PSP, that was the PS Vita, PS1, PS2, all that kind of stuff that really cemented our experiences. So there is more of an attachment in that case and wanted to be involved in that, and that's what I got in spades from PS2 to PS4, and PS5 just feels like the cold shoulder. So
you also think it has something to do with like you just maybe being older. You have more like life responsibilities and things like that. So generally, you don't have as much time for those things.
as far as what being tied to community and stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I look for the spots where I can be involved,
Mhm.
and I think it's more of I think you're right, where it's more I'm more distant from the PlayStation community because I decided to invest more time into the Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts community,
Okay.
where that's where I wanted to spend my time. Whereas not obviously I love to converse and have fun with PlayStation fans, but obviously I have more deeper connection and conversation with Final Fantasy fans.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's that, but I don't know. Do you feel the same? Like
About what?
when you're talking to people outside the podcast or even outside of gaming, if they bring up something like Baldur's Gate 3, that would heighten your sense a lot more than just saying, "Oh yeah, I play on PlayStation."
Yeah. Well, I'm having that thing right now where like I talk to someone at work about two people actually about Baldur's Gate 3 all the time, but like that's not like it's not like a PlayStation specific thing, you know? And even one of them is playing it on PC, the other is playing it on PS5, and like I that person who has a PS5, like I think only they actually just got the PS5 just for Baldur's Gate, but like they mostly just play like Final Fantasy on there. So it's like I, like I don't really talk to them about the more like PlayStation centric things, like that, like things like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's more like just gaming topics rather than like super hyper focused like I don't talk to them about the things that I would talk to them about that I would talk to you guys about, right? Like you guys are like the only ones I could talk about like things like this about like Jim Ryan retiring or what's going on at Naughty Dog like or stuff like that, right? Whereas like the people that I just talk about games with in my everyday life, like I don't get to get more into like the more like deeper community stuff, you know?
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, I didn't really do the same until I started getting more into podcasts, and I think really the influence from IGN and podcasts in general, right, made me start thinking about this in a different kind of way.
Yeah,
And then after a while, I was just saying, man, I really don't care. I really care more about the games and the conversation around that than just the actual companies with the consoles. But at the same time, we are involved in this ecosystem, so I think it's worth talking about because
yeah,
there is like it definitely feels like a missing piece from where I grew up with PlayStation ones and twos stuff like that versus what it is now, where I look at my PS5 like, yeah, you're just a machine that plays games for me. Whereas I looked
yeah.
at my PS4, my PS3, I got the PS3 and was $600, man. Like,
Yes.
you know, so like for me, I was just like, yeah, this is where I want to play my games at because I'm involved with the ecosystem and I love it. So different
Yeah.
mindset. So
Yeah. Um yeah, so I guess kind of bring this back to the gym. Um I mean 30 years at PlayStation is at one company, dear God, that's insane. So congratulations to him for that. He this is the thing why like people love to like dunk on him and whatnot, but man, like this guy has really like been with PlayStation through its ups and its downs through every era, um, and has guided it through its seemingly its most successful era so far. And then also just like seeing some of the PlayStation developers come out and like wish him, well on his retirement and just saying like how much they appreciated him and like how like the initiatives that he took specifically when the pandemic was just starting and how quick he was to react to all that stuff and getting everyone home safely and all that stuff like how developers at PlayStation really appreciated like what he did during that time period, which must have been absolutely just like horrible to be a CEO during that time period. For him to handle that the way that he did, it was really cool seeing developers just like come out and just say how much they appreciated him for that. Um, so like I don't know, man. Like I think a lot of the stuff about him has been overblown, like the "We Believe in Generations" or the "Who wants to play old games" and stuff like that. Like things that he said years ago that people just for whatever like like Macho. When this news broke, um, there was this one person I for whatever reason popped up on my timeline, and she was asking, so why are people like happy that this guy is leaving? The comments underneath this tweet painted Jim Ryan as just like Hitler, basically, like the worst person in the gaming industry. Like people were saying, like, oh, because he hates old games and and things like that. This is the guy who's responsible for Sony going more into like the serious, third person story games, or this is the guy responsible for closing down Japan studio, or this is the guy responsible for why Sony hates Japanese games, or this is the guy who's responsible for Sony censoring Japanese games, and it's just like the most like outlandish things. I'm just like it was the same thing that we talked about last podcast about the whole Baldur's Gate situation, how people can like twist things and make them so like 10 times worse than they were ever intended to be. Um I feel very much the same about him where it's just like sure he has had quotes that are like questionable.
absolutely, the whole cat's email.
Yeah, for sure.
The
And
the
and
horrible
that and
communication with what was it, the charge upcharging for upgrades and then going back on it, like,
Horizon specifically, like,
yeah,
yeah, and we criticize those moments as they rightfully deserve to be criticized, but
100%.
there's some other things where I'm just like, you guys are just like,
Insufferable. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
insufferable and irrational. I listened to a couple podcasts already that are on both ends of the spectrum, and
yeah,
we know gaslighters will light the fire. But at the same time, yeah, I think he was not the best CEO. I
yeah.
think he was the most respected, or one of the most respected ones for sure.
Mhm.
But he's not the best, but he's not the worst. I think he's more middle ground. That's why I say before that I don't think he was like the worst CEO, not even close. But
Yeah.
I'm excited for. At least I'm looking forward to who's going to be taking up the mantle from here on out.
Yeah, it's exciting for sure to see, like, because it like this time next year, man, like we could potentially be looking at a different PlayStation, and that's both exciting and scary. Like, let's not act like this next CEO could be quote unquote even worse than how people find Jim Ryan, right? This new CEO could completely take a left pivot of how, a left pivot of like PlayStation's current plans, and like even like triple down on live service, and like, hey Corey, your next game, like, let's cancel that, you're working on a live service game. Or Insomniac, let's cancel Spider-Man 3 and make a Spider-Man or Into the Spider-Verse game that's live service. Or it could, just as well as we're excited for how, cool change can be, it can also be the vice versa, and change can be very bad too, right? Like, PlayStation is on top of the world right now in terms of just like how well they're doing. This next CEO could absolutely sabotage that, right? With new policies and
Yeah.
things, right? So,
Yeah, so it's the one thing we talk about with Xbox where Phil Spencer's all nice and dandy now, but who's going to be the next guy coming in?
yeah, yeah,
Where Microsoft is making all these acquisitions, they have Game Pass, and all kind of stuff. And all that stuff is good now, so live it up while you can, because the next guy that comes in might not have that same philosophy and completely
yeah,
dump everything. And then what's going to happen then?
yeah, for sure.
So
Um,
it's the same, like you said, the same thing with here. They seem to be having a good run. I don't think it's their best, but right now they're pretty much, the train's still going. But the next one that we know can stop putting coal in the fire and completely put the train to a stop. So
yeah,
let's hope that
definitely.
doesn't happen, because with the live service games, man, it's not looking good. It's not looking good with the
So
sale of live
far,
service games. So
so far, and there's some that I'm optimistic for, but yeah,
right,
we shall see. We shall
right,
see.
right, right, right.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a pretty good note to end off on, man. So congrats, Jim, for again 30 years at a single. He was there even like before PlayStation 1 like launched. Like he's been there since 1994, which is insane, man.
That's the launch of the
Um,
first PlayStation.
was it 94 or 96?
I want to say 94.
I
Now
think
I
it
got
was
to. I
96.
gotta look it up
Yeah, look it up.
because FF7 was 97. Let me see real quick. PS1 launch. Yeah, 96. You're right. June 1996 in Japan.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know it was only 4 years between PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. Um,
Oh, it was December 3rd, 1994 for Japan,
oh, really?
and then in North America is 1995, and then unless, yeah, Wikipedia has totally different things. Okay, there you
Oh,
go.
okay.
Yeah, so yeah, PlayStation was 1994 for Japan, and then it came out in New Zealand 1996.
Okay. Weird. Okay.
Yeah. Either
Um,
way, it was around that time.
gotcha.
Real
Um,
quick, Alpha made a good point too that well, he said that sadly next generation will be the last for consoles. Games are becoming too big for what consoles can deliver. Hmm. We'll see.
um, maybe.
I think companies having hardware is gonna last for longer than we think, but we'll see how it changes, man. Xbox
Yeah.
definitely changed the game again this generation. and a
I mean,
crazy
it seems
pivot.
like they're not even like their next console, quote unquote, is not even like a traditional like console. It's like a hybrid
Yeah,
thing. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what PS6 does.
yeah, I'm confident that we'll have PlayStation consoles for a while. So always Sony's always they've always had like pride in their hardware.
And also
So
like that's like it's a bigger like chunk of their business than it is for Microsoft. Like I think I think I saw something the other day that like something like 6% of Microsoft's like total like their business and like the money that they make is Xbox. It's like a really low percentage. Like they could cut off the entire Xbox division and Microsoft wouldn't hurt. Like they probably wouldn't even notice it. Whereas PlayStation, obviously, PlayStation's a bigger part of the overall Sony business than Xbox is to Microsoft. So like it behooves Sony to keep with the console business than I think it does for Microsoft. Like I feel like Microsoft has a more incentive to like move away from consoles than Sony ever would.
yeah, yeah.
Um but yeah, that is going to do it for DualShock and Sense 110. I want to thank everyone for tuning in live or after the fact. We always appreciate it. Matcha, what do you got going on this week, man?
Um, a little bit more work around here. Actually, my second monitor just got delivered, so I'm gonna
Nice.
start tinkering around with that. And I don't know. It's like a super rainy day today, so we're gonna see what's really in the mood for. Sammy's sitting down playing Yakuza Zero and going through the legendary playthrough. Are you gonna try and get the
Nice.
platinum trophy in that bag?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm still salty about what happened on Steam.
Okay. All right. That's fair. See ya, Alpha. But yeah, other than that, I want to see what strikes the fan. Either more Baldur's Gate 3 or Final Fantasy 14. It depends how much I want to fire around my computer and test some things out. So yeah, just gonna be chilling. I'm really just excited for Spider-Man 2, man. That's like honestly, that's all in my mind right now.
You know when the reviews come out? I think it's like the 14th or 16th?
What day is the 16th? That's a Monday. Yeah, that'll be the
Yeah.
16th. Yeah.
Okay, it's something like that. But yeah, we should be getting reviews soon, man. Quick prediction. Is it a 90 plus on Metacritic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I haven't looked into previews other than the fact that it's that people really liked it, but from what I've seen from that last trailer where they broke down the open world, I think they're gonna be hitting something. We know they can do great storytelling. We know that combat can be crunchy and satisfying, and the way you traverse that open world seems like it's gonna be a complete game changer. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a 90.
I hope so, man. I hope so. This would be their first 90 since, oh my God, I think I want to say maybe Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal, maybe something like that. It's been a while.
Unless we have a survivor coming out with like a 5 out of 10 or some shit like that. So
Yeah,
saying that the first Spider-Man game was better, like all right, bro.
yeah.
Cool.
Um,
What about you?
but yeah. For me, more Baldur's Gate. Um, and that's pretty much it, honestly. Well, between now and our next podcast, I should be getting into Cyberpunk as well. So hopefully, I'll be able to talk about that on the next podcast. Um,
Nice. Looking forward to it. I definitely need to play that
yeah,
too.
yeah. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us, the DualShock and Sense crew. We will catch you guys next time for episode 111. Until then, peace out. Have a good weekend.